Before we get into this episode, I just wanted to jump on here and give a little disclaimer because as creatives, we want things to be perfect, and they don't always end up being perfect. My mindset as a creative has always been I want it to be as perfect as possible. Over the years, I've been able to let that go and step into the mindset that sometimes it's not the thing that needs to happen at a particular point in time, and not everybody else will see the imperfections that I will as the creator. In this episode, the beginning of it is very choppy and sketchy because for whatever reason, the video kept glitching and locking up. So it was very frustrating. It was becoming very frustrating for me as the host, trying to get the best episode and conversation with the guest as possible for you listeners. And I'm going to leave it that way. But the reason I'm going to leave it that way is because I want to be able to show creatives and anybody that's out there, even starting to do a podcast, even though I'm doing this through Zoom, don't have a studio yet because just can't afford to do that at this point in time. I'm using what I've got. I do have the vision of having a studio for guests to be able to come in, a setting that's comfortable and relaxed so you can see the one-on-one interactions. But I want to leave this here to let you see the imperfection of starting something new as I am in my career as a creative, stepping into this podcasting world, sharing my stories, sharing others' stories, their creative journeys to get to the point where they are now. I want it to be as raw as possible. And for that reason, I'm going to leave the glitches in versus editing those out and trying to edit those out. So I just wanted to make that little disclaimer here at the beginning. I hope you enjoy this episode with Lisa Borden, highly creative person who's done things her own way. And I think this message in this episode will speak to many of you out there. Enjoy. Lisa Borden, how are you?
I'm amazing. Happy to be here.
Excellent. I appreciate you coming on and being willing to share your story with the creative community as well. Let me give them a brief introduction for you, and then we'll dive right into it.
Great.
Lisa Borden, you are the founder of Borden Communications and Design Incorporated, established in 1994. Your firm focuses on business and human development, emphasizing ethical practices and meaningful success. You are the creator of the Wellness Intelligence Collective, which you launched in 2021. TWIC is a virtual community and healthy social network designed to connect like-minded individuals and promote wellness intelligence. You're a published author. You've authored 8 books sharing your insights on business development, wellness, and ethical entrepreneurship. You have diverse expertise beyond your professional roles. You're a Reiki master, an urban organic farmer, natural movement enthusiast, and a self-care guide. And you reflect a holistic approach to personal and professional well-being. That's a whole lot of roles.
It's a whole lot of roles. I'm not big into titles either, so it could go on longer.
I get it. I totally get it. I'm the same way. Yeah, I do that. So let me start off with my first question, and that is, where were you born and what was life like as a kid for Lisa?
I was born in Toronto, Ontario, Canada in 1971, and my parents are both from Toronto,
Okay.
and three of four of my grandparents are from Toronto.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's exactly like a unique, it's a fun fact because most people, especially the people that I work with who are American, who are in the US, generally people move around a lot.
Yeah.
And I have deep roots here, so I'm still here.
Yes. Right on.
And
Okay.
being born here and having a beautiful, committed family gave me certainly lots of advantages of having being surrounded by that kind of love. And it was a different world. And I have three kids of my own, and I've raising them around 15-minute drive from where I grew up.
Nice.
It's a very different world. It's a very different world, no matter our intention. But 1971 was good. No bike helmets and playing outside after school and no find your iPhone to be tracked. And I think the answer for most people would be very similar. Growing up in the 70s, things were just very different. I would say like free feeling in hindsight. I don't know that I felt that growing up, but certainly now as a mom and watching my kids, things were just very different.
For
Free to
sure.
be you and me.
For sure. How was elementary school for you? Were you a quiet kid? Were you one that kind of fit in easily, or were you more the one that wanted to be in the back of the class and be in the corner?
That's such a good question. Most people know me as somebody with a big mouth who's like unfiltered and just puts it all out there. And I was a really timid, quiet kid. I didn't like to perform. I didn't like to speak out loud in class. I did get to walk to school every day, and my mother had my neighbor four doors down walk me to school every day because I would be crying. Like it was like
Oh, okay.
so it's I've done a lot of work around that as you grow up and you're like, oh, like I have to go back. What was that about? And I think some of it is being a creative, being someone that's different. And maybe I wasn't timid. I just was scared to stand out because I didn't really fit in. But I also was amenable. So I did have friends,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like I never liked the whole groups. I didn't like the pressure. I didn't if I went back to elementary school now, I'd probably, with the knowledge that I have, is I'd probably beg my parents to be at like some forest school outdoors with alternative thinkers and artists.
Yeah.
But that wasn't, we conventionally went to school. That's what raising good kids meant.
Yeah.
And I went to a great school. I took a program that was new, French immersion. So I was with a very diverse group of kids. And my best friend today has been my best friend since kindergarten.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
That's amazing. You don't find that very often
you don't.
with
She's
people.
very special.
Yeah, I can imagine. I
Yeah,
have a few of those friends as well that I've known that long, and it's not very common. Not very common.
yeah.
What type of work did your parents do as you were a kid?
My mother did a volunteer work and otherwise was a stay-at-home mom,
Yeah.
like in the 70s. My father is a physician.
Oh, wow. Okay. And did any of them have the creative side of them at all? Or was there anybody in your family that had that?
It's interesting. I think the way that I'd answer that, knowing what I know now, is everybody has that creative in them.
Sure.
Did they use it? No. I would say that they are much more like conventional. My father, I don't know, if you think about care as a form of creativity, then I would say, yes, my father was very creative because he was incredibly caring. So we have a different healthcare system
Yeah.
than you have in the US, but the government pays doctors here.
Okay.
There's allocation. You get $5 for this, you get $20 for this, you get $60 for this for every blood test you do, whatever the fee structure was. And when the government took away doctors doing house calls,
Okay.
my father continued to do house calls because
Nice.
he showed up for human care,
Yeah.
not for conventional medical care in that way. So then I would say, oh, he was creative. Do you know what I mean? Because he was listening to himself rather than what was being given to him. I would say that my mother was creative because she cared. So I look back on how I ate, and we weren't allowed pop, soda, as you call it. That wasn't something that was a part, even if my father was having it, like my mother wasn't giving that to us, and she would buy whole wheat, not white bread. And I look at it now and I'm like, the whole wheat that she was buying that was ultra processed in bags was being served as healthy, but it's not based on where I am today. But I knew we were growing up with that kind of love and care, and that my parents put that out. So that's how I do it. And my father was always looking at different hobbies.
With being nervous going to school every morning, do you remember an age where that might have started to fade?
Oh, it never faded. I
Okay.
just never, I'm wearing my sweatshirt today that says question everything that I've designed. And I think I was annoying because I questioned everything because my brain was like so excited to learn. And it's like, why are you so curious? It's annoying. We're supposed to fit into a box. So I think when we're in school, we're taught to fit into a box. It's a very conventional way of.
This is going to be frustrating.
It's okay. It's teaching you patience.
Oh, I have plenty of patience. I
It's
just,
annoying as fuck.
I have difficulty with paying for a service and that service not being up to par.
Yeah, I have that difficulty with Mighty, for example. I trust.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh yeah.
yeah. I we've connected for a reason.
Yeah, I'm seeing that. This
Yeah.
is all right. Mm,
Ask the question again about school, and we'll go back from there.
yeah, so let me ask it differently even because we've touched on the part where it was you're the questioner, you're the seeker, being with your friend. Did she give you some comfort of being able to go into that group each day of all the kids and be able to sit there through the 8 hours?
God, I sat there for 8 hours. So, how do you sit in a classroom for 8 hours? That's like my first question that I hear that question. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that.
Yeah,
I would say I had a lot of friends then that made it okay and not okay. Duality is a thing that we all feel. So I'm sure there was enough that kept me happy because I do remember having great joy through elementary. But at the same time, I think there was that always that underlying stress. And speaking as a 53-year-old about elementary school and someone who's done immense looking at that in all different kinds of therapy. My answer now is going to sound much more intelligent and insightful than if you were asking me as a kid.
sure.
I don't think elementary school in how it was then or how it is now is a healthy place for any child. That would be my answer. However, I had a few remarkable teachers. One that a group of my elementary school friends invited for dinner a few years ago, and he's 80,
Oh,
and
wow.
he couldn't believe that we invited him, and he changed our lives. So, in that, I just think we have to find the gratitude and the good stuff in all of it. Ironically, I sent my three children into the school system
Yeah,
because I didn't understand that I had a choice that would be okay for them. Wasn't brave or courageous enough. And then I was. I did the best that I could with a whole heart. And my son, who's now 24, going to be 25, my husband and I convinced him to, or gave him permission to drop out of university. We were like, buddy, you're not happy. Go and be a music journalist. People were like, are you insane? He's going to be an accountant. I was like, doesn't, this is not for him. And it took him, even with that permission a couple of years, but he did it on his own terms
Right.
and he wakes up so happy every day and he's a creative.
Yeah.
And so I just think we know that we don't fit into a box.
Yeah.
I think we all know that somewhere inside of us, but when are we willing to not live in the box?
For
And
sure.
what does it take? That would be probably when I was in elementary, it was like recess is fun and I love having lunch with my friends or this. And sometimes we get to do art and that's fun. But I hope the teacher doesn't like that stomach ache of probably for 8 hours being nervous that I was going to be called on and have to stand up. Like, how does that affect me even now? Oh, yeah, that's traumatic.
Yeah, exactly. I was the same way. I had the few friends that I gravitated towards, but I didn't want to be called on. I didn't want to be like the center of attention or any of that type of thing. I just wanted to blend in just to get through the day because I
And
didn't.
you're not a blender and you're not a blender inner.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. I was in the same scenario too, in terms of how close that I was to the school. My school was literally three houses down from where I was. So I
Right.
would walk myself to school. And fortunately, the kindergarten was right on that corner away from the house. So it was from a house straight into the kindergarten door and then start the day.
I just think of that, like you say that. I was in kindergarten in grade one, and my mother had a friend who was the same age as me walk me to school. The times were just different
Yeah.
because as a mother, I would not have let my kid, it was like walking to school, there's like strangers, and there's you need a phone or you need this. It's did the world get more dangerous? Did we become crazier? Is it a combination of both?
I,
But it
I think,
sounds so idyllic that you could walk to school three doors down, or we all just went to our neighborhood schools in Toronto,
yes.
depending where you lived. You
Yeah.
went. Very few people that I knew were in private schools.
Yeah, it was definitely idyllic. Maybe we've gotten a little bit worse. Maybe there's just more attention to it at this point in time. No, that can be up for debate, but it was definitely different, a different time in terms of doing that. With moving into third, fourth grade, are you starting to garner maybe a couple more friends that you're becoming really close with?
My elementary experience was probably unique in that because I was in this French immersion program.
Yeah,
So kids came from other neighborhoods to it because it was specialized, even though it was in public school.
yeah.
We all moved through the grades together.
Okay.
So I still, even if I'm not close with those people, we still share in our 50s laughs about elementary. We did have some very special teachers, and I always felt like I was friends with these people.
Yeah.
So I don't think in grade three and four I gained more or less. And we were all it was different. We had to be kind to each other because we were all socialized, like we did everything together. That's the way that it was. And I think people couldn't bully or judge in the same way they can with social media and kids being online and so much about there's lots of people I was friends with that I knew their families because we had lunches and dinners together, or you didn't know their family because you weren't having lunches and dinners, but people would pick each other up. We just had play dates. So I don't think there was much change until I was in grade seven, which is when I changed schools.
Okay. So, with it being a French immersion school, was it mainly focused on learning the language, or was it an all-around experience of the culture as well?
It's a great question. I to speak to the curriculum is that we learned math, the regular math curriculum, but in French.
Okay.
So it was French immersion, as in it wasn't about culture, it was learning the language. So
Got it.
developing our brains that way. But when we had gym, it was in English. I'm trying to remember, but we did like our history and our geography and our math and our language in French.
Okay. Got it. Got it. All right.
So we were all starting at a very similar point, which is unique. Where
That's very fascinating for me. And I understand that because of being so close to Canada here in the Metro Detroit area. I've always known about the different languages and stuff that are come into play and the different ethnicities that are prevalent, even more so when we would cross over going to Ontario from Detroit. And obviously, us being in the States, the drinking age in Canada was 18, whereas for us it was 21. So
yeah,
once we hit 18, we started crossing the bridge.
exactly. We do have some advantages up here, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But that's where I started saying, oh, wow, there's a whole bunch of different ethnicities ingrained here in these communities compared to what I'm experiencing in the States just across the border. So it was very fascinating to see that and experience that at that age. When you shifted into seventh grade, having to go to another school, what was that like from a mental standpoint in terms of that's a transition age anyways, as you're entering adolescence, and to have that big of a shift in your environment, your everyday environment, what was that like for you?
Junior high for me was grade 7, 8, and 9
Yep.
in one school. Having again had three kids go through grade 7 and 8, I will say that those are definitely the most challenging years in school. Class, because again, you're back.
Yeah, this is so irritating.
I'm gonna start. You want me to start again at grade 7, 8, 9?
Yeah, I heard the difficulty of that,
Yeah, I'll
and
just
then
say
it clicked.
that. So junior high for me was moving from grade 6 to this huge building. However, I moved with my whole group of French immersion kids. And there were a couple other French immersion schools that fed into this junior high. So there was like a little bit of a blend, but we were still a small group within a bigger environment. So there was
Yeah,
some safety there. But I think socially, I look back now because you've asked the question, and you realize that some of the people that I was in this friendship with, that all of a sudden they were like, oh, there's all these other people. And so I don't have to hang around with Lisa anymore. I can, and I was just, oh my God, I'm still don't want to be called
right.
out by teachers.
Yeah.
And also, not to jump ahead, but one story that's really stands out for me is in my last year of high school. We had grade 13 when I was in high school, is I dropped calculus on the second day. I really wanted to take it because I really thought I wanted to do business, which I
Yeah.
ended up doing without calculus. But I dropped it because I felt so stupid because I didn't even I was so impressed that people put their hand up and could ask questions. And I was like, I don't even know how do they even know how to ask this question? I am not suitable to be in this class. Like, I'm stupid. Teachers had told me I was stupid. So I go back to grade 7
Oh,
and
wow.
I think, oh, I never really, I just wanted to be creative. I remember we had something called family studies in junior high, which was like cooking.
Okay.
And we like learned how to sew, like use a sewing machine, which I thought was so great. And that was fun. But then, like in the kitchen, which I loved doing, you were in groups and you got to make something, but we were taught like how to empty French onion soup mix from a packet into sour cream. It was like, I look back now, I'm like, that's not create. Like, what is happening? And I do not remember, I cannot recall the face or the name of those teachers.
Wow, that's interesting. You mentioned something I want to touch on because it's a key point of growing up and how somebody can affect you who is supposed to be an authority. You said you heard from some of your teachers that you were stupid. Can you give an example of one of those instances where you first heard that and what that did to you?
Oh, that's like a big thing to unpack, which I've spent a lot of time around. So I'll try and give I think we are affected by our teachers one way or another.
Yeah,
And I think for me, I'm in a position where I am now because I've done my work, that those were the biggest gifts. So I don't really feel like I'm a victim of those people anymore because they all help me to recognize that, like, I'm not actually supposed to be here.
yeah,
Like, no, I don't really get Shakespeare or this project. And so, not really, I still can't do stuff that I'm not good at. Like, I still don't want to. And people who know me would be like, she does the most challenging stuff. She works so hard. But we're supposed to find some ease and some groove. And school doesn't teach us to discover ourselves, it teaches us to produce shit that I don't know, might not resonate at all. So if you gave me a Bristol board and told me to do a project on something that I wanted, I'd probably spend 10 times the amount of time as anyone else and I would love it. And I still remember some of those projects. I
mm,
remember that teacher and I wasn't really nervous for that presentation.
yeah,
And it felt good because I would recognize when other people were presenting, I was also interested, mostly in like things like geography and environmental studies, where I think they were practical.
yeah,
So, how did being told, like then, I think when I go back, I think I was confused because like, I know I'm stupid. I was told even in elementary, like there was a problem with me because my handwriting wasn't good enough. I don't know, like that certainly didn't help me. So I don't know how to answer that really. I don't know. I think my life, my work, and how I parented all has full trauma response in it. I can say, obviously, it affected me because when my oldest was in grade 1 and he would not care to do art.
yeah,
He just wasn't interested in art. He's highly creative and he loved to read, but and he wasn't a problem. He was this well-behaved, sweet kid. And all these kids did all these portraits in full color. And his was like 4 lines, brown, 2 eyes, like this whole thing. And I should take screenshots of when your face freezes, of the look on your face, because it's around a second after it freezes for you. I see it freeze, and it's pretty funny.
I can imagine.
What did you hear about my
Four,
kid?
yeah, 4 lines and four brown lines.
Yeah. So they told me my son needed occupational therapy or he needed this to hold a pencil differently. And it was the beginning of me advocating for my kid in no, like my kid is exceptional. You have to see him for who he is. And at the time, I don't even think I recognized that was also a trauma response for me, which is I'm going to do for my kid what I didn't receive from
Right.
my parents or my teachers
Yes.
at that age. And I don't, I now understand my parents did the best that they could do too. They didn't know. And I think we depended on teachers. And also over time, like everything these days, there's a whole lot of entitlement and there's a whole lot of, I want job security and I want to be recognized as this, as the teacher. And we forget that we're raising the next generation and that really our goal should be self-worth and self-care. I didn't learn that I had a nervous system.
Yeah,
That didn't come up in health class. So it's the curriculum, I think, is broken. The education system is broken. And I'm a proud outcome of that in
right.
my own messy, broken way.
Yeah. Eh, So what I'm picking up already is the effects that it had on you. You've obviously done plenty of work to overcome that just by the way that you're answering the questions. And you've consciously made the decisions to parent differently based on what you've experienced. But I think these are key points for creatives to hear because it lets them get a feeling of, okay, there's another creative. It went through these schools and did these things in school, felt like they weren't supposed to be there, ended up getting out of the school and then taking off in their own career and doing their stuff and excelling at it, accomplishing many different things, regardless of what took place during the school years. Moving into eighth and ninth, when you're about to pivot into that higher platform, were you starting to look at any potential opportunities to be creative and express that and experience that more?
I was misunderstood by my parents
Okay.
and I didn't know myself. And also, those two things are related. I don't think we need to fix people. I think we need to listen to them. I think I don't know anything and I have no solutions, but conversations are really important. And that stuff wasn't dragged out of me. And one of the things that I can say back to what you were saying that's fascinating is I think the reason we have so many more options in education these days is because people are creating now
Yeah.
what we didn't have for ourselves. And I think that's the most exciting thing. And that's my work has always been you don't have to be fancier or better. It doesn't need to be a grind. We don't need to chase metrics. Like bring humaning back, right? Like we're all flawed, messy freaks. It's just like, where's our points of connection and what works for us? And there's a really big difference between discernment and judgment, is something
Oh,
that I have to be discerning. I don't want to be in relationship with you because it's not healthy for me, rather than Rich, there's something wrong with you
right.
because I'm not comfortable. There's
Yeah.
so we all have those choices. And I don't think as a child at any point I was given that choice. But I say that in a way that wasn't a choice in the 70s and 80s. It was unique to have that opportunity. Whereas now I think there's so many routes
Yeah.
and not enough people are taking them necessarily, but
Right.
I've always been weird.
Okay.
I now love my kind of weird. I've done the work to arrive, which is, yeah, this is one of my designs too. I'm not for everyone.
For sure.
And neither are you. So, how can we be expected as one of 10, one of 20, one of 30, one of 200 in college to actually sit there and all be like excited about what we're learning?
Yeah, exactly. And so just from instantaneous connection, you're not weird. You may feel that. You're not.
Maybe I am. It's a compliment, not a negative.
Yeah. There's weird and then there's misunderstood and then there's different. It could all be all in the same, or it could be three completely different aspects. One of the things that I want to look at As I'm trying to wait for the screen to unfreeze. Good Lord. This is
You're back.
this is so challenging. I guess this is a lesson in compassion for myself.
Yes. And it's also it's my effect on people. So you can blame it on me.
No, I will not do that.
I challenge people. I'm very challenging. So take it as like a, I'm so happy she showed up because this is like a unique project.
Yeah, but I'm not even seeing it that way. I'm seeing it from a perspective of, all right, I've got to learn to roll with this a little bit more because I used to be a perfectionist to the extreme. I would not put stuff out because it wasn't perfect. And got to the point in my life where because I wasn't able to exceed at the levels of perfection that I felt was perfect, that was destroying me. And then from my story, that's where I ended up trying to take my life at a certain point because I couldn't excel at the perfection that I was creating.
Self-worth.
Yeah, for sure. There was no validation of it. And I didn't have enough of it for myself to be able to get past that.
And didn't even know that it probably didn't even believe that there was an option.
Right. I didn't know there was an option to not be perfect. And fortunately, learned over the next 10, 15 years that I could just let go of that because it didn't really matter.
A
What I,
process, right?
yeah, what I perceived as perfect or flawed, people would look at it and be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that you did that." And it would be like, "What? You can't see that, that, or that?" So yeah, it was an interesting thing for me to come to that realization. Hopefully, people listening that are creatives, they can take that in and get to that point faster. Because one of the things I did learn was there is no perfection within the world. It's only perceived. And the only thing that becomes perfect is after the fact, when you return to source. That's when those flaws dissipate and disappear. We're stepping into high school now. Is there more of a feeling of, okay, I've got a bigger group that's my core friends, or is it still just the one girl that's
I would say during that time, I've never had conflict with her, but people were taking off socially
yeah,
and people were doing like going out, making plans. And it wasn't like my friends were also older. I was at that point, I'd been going to summer camp, and that's when I started working at summer camp. And
okay,
so once you stop being sequestered with your own age and you start having exposure to all sorts of people, I realized, oh, I really like guys who are a couple years older. And I don't mean that from a, I want to have lots of guy friends and hook up with them in some way. Oh, I just don't like the bullshit of teenage girls. What the fuck is this? This isn't for me. And that's not something I could have expressed then. It just, I think you gravitate to where you're more comfortable. And if I went back, or the fact that also I would challenge my kids to do stuff that was outside of their comfort zone, that wasn't something I didn't speak to my parents about it because they didn't understand me, but they didn't speak to me about it because there was no, there was this misunderstanding. So I spent a lot of time out of school and I spent a lot of time with people who didn't even go to my school, which didn't really help to connect me to being in classes.
okay,
So I had a very small group of friends. I did not go to the parties. I did not, it just wasn't my scene. I would say still, I just am not into bullshit. I'm not into small talk. Not that I can't engage in it, but I don't like bullshit. I don't like lying. I don't like games. so all of that I think is a part of those years
Yeah.
naturally. And
Yeah.
I wish I could go back and like experience that again with the lens that I have. But yeah, I would say it was very difficult. It was challenging. Grade 10 was and grade 11, I felt more invisible probably than ever in school, but by choice also, because anything that was coming, I have one teacher that I can remember his name and positive effect on me from 4 years, 3.5 years.
Okay. And what was that effect? What was that positivity that he brought to you?
The positivity is that he was weird. He was like weird in a great way. I still remember like giggling and laughing. He just did things very differently.
Okay.
I think I've always connected with that. Although then I wouldn't have, I just thought of him as fun. Oh,
Yeah.
so he's like a fun teacher. And I don't know, he would call me out and it wouldn't affect me like or my nervous system and like I just loved that class. I think I felt like me in it
Yeah.
because maybe he was so weird and he embraced the weird kids, not the kids that got the attention in all the classes because he knew something. If I could have that conversation with him now,
Yeah. Yeah. That was the question that was coming up in my head was that maybe he recognized in you that you're different. I know she's different, so I want to make sure that I give her some encouragement in terms of not necessarily putting her on the spot, but making it more comfortable for her to be able to speak up and say something if called upon.
yeah, I was that classic.
There
You're
you go.
back. You're back.
Jeez.
I was going to say that it wasn't that I was not capable or able, but it's like, what are you judging me on? Or what's the environment you're creating? Where am I actually stimulated?
Yeah.
I was that classic example of being a 90s student or like a 50s student, or and it was not good. And I never liked tests. That was the other thing. There was that pressure and back from elementary and still now. I can say that still lives on. And I'm sure it's something that I can clear in more therapy. Do you know what I mean? What that is. But it's also, I just think it's stupid. Like now it's, did I wake up with a headache? Do I not feel my best? Like I would do, if I did 5 interviews this week,
All right. So I heard 5 interviews and then it clipped. So I want to take a second here and I want to do something with you that is completely out of the norm for me. But I feel like there's an opportunity to step into something, especially for myself. And I'm going to ask you to tap into your intuition because I'm trying to get a sense in terms of what is actually going on here. Based on your intuition, is this interview supposed to take full completion today?
yep,
It is. Okay. And go ahead.
there's no such thing as full completion.
Got you.
So I believe based on the technology that we could have ended this 20 minutes ago
Okay.
or 5 minutes in, whatever it is. But
Yeah.
it's again about perfection. So this is happening for a reason to test both of us in the conversation.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most beautiful things that we can put out to the world, I don't believe we're going against force here. That's using my intuition.
Got you.
Otherwise, I would have taken that as a sign. It's like perfectly imperfect.
Okay.
And it's about self-care. And this is going to be, it's actually, I think, funny because we spoke about the challenges of editing, and good fucking luck to you. And so you're going to have to find your way differently in what you spoke about being challenging. And now it's like upping you a level that's going to make you ready to actually do this in a different way. Or also, whether that's internet or Zoom, explore something like StreamYard. It's going to make things better for you.
Yeah.
And you also are going to be aware that a guest will stay on when something is not perfect, because this is actually real life. So if you're doing real life, then suck it up and stop focusing on the technology.
No, for sure. That's great advice. It's the side of me that does not want to infringe on your generosity of being in attendance today.
Yep.
And
And there's endless time and energy. So
yeah,
it's like life's not one shot. And also, if you want to just stop, that's okay too. It's up to you. I just think we should complete, if it takes a bit longer and you only end up with a 30-minute thing to share that you feel good about, then that's what it's supposed to be. It's fun.
yeah, I get where you're going. Yeah, I won't end up with a 30-minute thing because I won't cut that much out of it.
I'm
There's,
just saying whatever goes. And the beauty of a conversation is when other people can see that things aren't perfectly edited and real. And it's one of the issues with AI is everybody can be filtered with these amazing clips and everybody interviewing everybody else. And it's, hey, people, what's your purpose? Just real conversations can actually change the world. I don't have any other solutions. That's all. I just know that conversations can change the world. I really believe in that.
absolutely. I believe it as well. And that's the exact reason why I'm doing this to begin with, is the conversations.
Yeah.
Getting to the end of high school, did you play any sports at all?
I did ballet. I also wasn't very good at that.
Oh, ballet. That's,
And I was told it was like, she's not very good, but my mother kept sending me to ballet. It was like I wanted to do different things, but it was like that was the track.
yeah,
And I sucked. Like I remember not liking it. I didn't like me in it. I didn't like the performative stuff. I didn't like my hair having to be a certain way. And it was like, wow, this isn't, it's no.
yeah. That's interesting because I'm also saying the constraints of being a ballerina in terms of there's a particular way it needs to be done, needs to
Yeah.
be pristine in order to be great. Um,
I post on Instagram a lot what happens to my brain inside, different funny memes about what happens to my brain inside when I'm given specific verbal instructions. And that's not the way that I'm wired. Good. You learn about yourself over time. I
yeah,
know this. And
yeah,
like people like, can we speak about it? I'm like, I need to also, there needs to be like messaging is good. I have to use emojis, but you could call that, oh, she needs special education. I'm like, okay, however you need to label me, that's fine now. There's the special education or being put in that program. It's like something's wrong with that kid. Not, wow, you're a unique prize and present and gift to the world, and you need a different pathway.
yeah,
Let's find what that is. It's so exciting. It's
yeah, exactly. Exactly. You said something else that I want to touch on as well, is that you started working at a summer camp. And was that something that gave you comfort as we lock up again?
You're okay. Just
Okay,
ask the question for summer camp again. Most of it came out. You froze for only 1 second there, but
got you. So, working at the summer camp, being out in nature, did that bring something out into you that made you feel comfortable as well as being around some older?
it's interesting because my first summer camp experience was not so positive. I was homesick and I didn't really feel like I belonged. I was still out in nature. So when I was 15, I went to a summer camp and I was there for a long time. The last 2 years as a camper and 7 years as staff. And I can still, in my soul, I know every tree root along the path, and all of it is a good feeling. The people, the even the people that weren't my friends, it was like I felt I felt it was home and we had fun. And I think people, because you're sequestered, everyone was offline at the time. We needed a payphone to even call our parents
Yeah.
to say hi. So you're like offline and in nature and in one place. So I think everybody is healthier, focused, having a better time. So that just that those people in my life still, even the ones who are campers and 10 years younger than me or years older than me, including the directors and owners of the camp who are no longer the directors and owner of camp, are some of my favorite people in the whole world. And the directors of this summer camp are the people that need to run the world because this summer camp was known to take misfits. A
Okay.
lot of us laugh about that even now, but the husband and wife team, Howie and Kathy, are still, they're just spectacular humans who were doing exactly what they needed to do. And they fostered so much connection and love in in everyone there, like in everyone there. And you could interview 100 people that I went to summer camp with, and they would say the same thing, or they totally didn't like them because they didn't get it. And that was good too, because they weren't part of the energy of camp.
Yeah.
But very special people, I would say that in my top people of saving my life, helping me create myself along the journey.
Nice.
And it's where I got together with my husband when we were 20,
Okay.
because so that's almost 34 years ago.
Wow. That's fantastic. So, based on what you said, doing it for 7 years, I'm assuming you still did it obviously after high school as well.
Yeah.
Once you got through high school, when was the idea of being a creative and doing it more and regularly? When did that come into play?
Easiest answer, the easiest answer. That was the easiest question you've given me. So on my first day or second day of university, as we call it here,
Okay.
college, I was in a 4 year program and I switched it to a 3 year program. And I was like, I'm getting this degree, I'm getting out of here. This is so not for me. And as friends and people were like, I'm going to go to law school and I'm going to be a social worker and they all had these career paths. And I was like, I'm going to major in French because I had left French immersion in high school. And I was like, at least a language. I felt that's like music. And I wasn't musical, but so language felt creative to me. Like it felt like at least I'll have that as a skill. It felt functional to me. And when I was graduating, I was like, I don't know what I want to do, but I'm definitely not employee material. I'm going to quit or get fired, like being a student. So I'm going to have to find my own way. And my grandfather, my mother's father, was very special. He owned, he created a paint company, paint manufacturing company.
Okay.
Him and his brothers started this as a store selling art supplies, like the original. And my grandfather was I don't even, he was amazing. He was creative. He was unique. He did things his own way. My life lessons for him are huge. He was the person who's ended up running a factory. He had his office door open. He did not dress up. Everybody was human. You could work in the canning department or the front office, and everybody was a human. He's just like his last name was Goodman, and it was very appropriate. So I had him in my life as a mentor, as a friend. He was funny too.
Yeah.
And he also was an artist. He was a creative. So he would do things like taking garbage and making it into art. And the year before he died, he actually had an art exhibit where he put all of his pieces. Some were like painted on paper towels, some were like golf balls that were painted on tees and put, he was just amazing that way. And anyone who complimented it in a special way, he put a sticker on it and he gave it to them. So he was a creative. He was an original creative. And so I worked for him and he said they needed somebody who spoke French because there's 52 stores that they serviced in Quebec.
Yeah.
And so I could be helpful there. And he said, but you're not staying in this company. You're going to do your own thing. And I did not get paid well. And I had to be at work at 7:30 in the morning.
Mm.
And there was no, he was like, it was like the opposite of getting like nepotism. It was like you work harder than anyone else because you're not going to have this job because you're my relative.
Yeah.
And Fridays was my favorite time because I got to actually have lunch with him for 20 minutes and it was amazing. And he was, as I said, the kindest, most generous. But I worked in the canning department. I worked in the lab. I had to work in every single department. And during that time, one of the lessons that I got was holy fuck, people do not follow through on what they say.
Yeah.
And I was like, I could be totally neurotic. And I was in charge of getting new business cards printed at the time we did that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I had to learn how to design it, lay it out, send it to the printer. And I'd be like, we're going to a meeting, a trade show. Can't upset everybody. Will you have it for the 19th? And they're like, yes. And that was me being like, okay, we need it for the 23rd. So I already have buffer. I know how to manage a project.
Yeah.
And on the 17th, I would call because you had to call. And yeah, they're going to be ready. On the 18th, I would call, what time are you delivering them tomorrow? Oh, whatever. And then the 19th would come and go. Cards. 20th, they're not answering the phone. Oh, this is still my responsibility.
Yeah.
So I started to find workarounds for their suppliers because I learned, oh, I'm really good at not trusting people.
Yeah.
I didn't trust my teachers. I didn't trust myself. Now I don't trust them. So I'm always looking for this sort of workaround. That's creative, right?
Yep.
So I had to get sweatshirts for a trade show, custom printed sweatshirts. And they were, whatever they were quoted at the time. I think things were more expensive then because you couldn't just price check everything.
Right.
So and there was also a human factor in it. And I think they were $75 for
Okay.
this printed sweatshirt, whatever. And the guy was like scammy and it wasn't seeming right. And he was taking too long and he wasn't getting back to me. And I decided if I was allowed to leave work and leave the office, I was going to go to this downtown like wholesaler that I used to go to before summer camp. We'd all shop at this wholesaler's. I remembered that the sweatshirts were only like $15 there.
Yeah.
So I went and I bought these sweatshirts for $15 and I used the yellow pages and I found an embroiderer who happened to be like 5 minutes from the factory that I was working in. This guy, Pete, who I still know his phone number to this day because he became one of my biggest suppliers.
Yeah.
And he embroidered them and I had them done in 2 days, 2 days for a little bit of driving. I had no nervous system problems. I didn't have that weight of stress on my shoulders. And I saved the company around $50 per sweatshirt, and
Yeah.
we did 100.
Yeah.
So that was my business idea. Came from that, which is holy shit, like I can do this because I just found something I'm good at,
Right.
which I didn't know. I had no career path. And oh, I'm actually like good at not trusting people and doing things my own way. So if I can save a company $50, maybe I could save a company $20 and make $30.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I can do this. Anyway, that was the beginning of Borden Communications in 1994, which had no business plan for.
Yeah.
But it was, I'm going to just over deliver on anything that's expected because people are so full of shit. I don't like full of shit. I love truth and transparency. And that began my sort of journey into using the yellow pages because Google didn't exist to
Right.
be creative or what I would call resourceful to find workarounds to do something where I wasn't in, and small businesses weren't a thing.
Yep.
That was a journey, but that's my easiest answer. That was very long to your question, which is university was just, I
Not
don't
for
know.
you. It
And
was,
that's why it was so easy for me to give my kids. My youngest is supposed to go next year.
okay.
He is going and he's very excited to go, but it's not an expectation. Like I will support my kids through anything they want to do to discover themselves
Yeah.
and to have the connection and experiences they want and be that guide, but it's not an expectation that you have to go to university or get a degree.
Yeah. That was beautifully described, beautifully long, because it gave so much insight into what a creative can do when they come up against a roadblock. And many times, as creatives, outsourcing something can create a roadblock, and it'll happen your entire career and or life. The other element of that I found very fascinating was the fact that it was your mother's father who was this hugely impactful person on your creative journey. And I was just on a podcast recently that came out, and I was able to share my experience of how my mother's father was such a huge impact on my life.
Cool.
So that was very interesting. Seeing that there's a new opportunity here now presenting itself for you, and you're creating your own business and starting this out. You don't want to be under restrictions necessarily other than what you give yourself. What is the thought of, okay, I'm going to try and grow this now? And the resources realistically for you at that point in time were the yellow pages, a book with all kinds of numbers and information. So it was a mini computer confined to maybe 300 pages at the most, because it had all the info that you would want and need at that point in time. With that, what is the thought process of, okay, how do I start making money and making it enough to where it's going to be sustainable?
Great question. I was 22 and it was 1994.
Okay.
I was turning 23. And so, first of all, my simplest answer is I had no clue about any of that.
Okay.
People have said recently, and I've been I followed this meandering path. And it's like wherever there's been opportunity for me to be, that's where I am. And when I started, though, I had no clue. So, money, I was just like, I'm going to have to do this because, and I was willing to take any job that I needed to. I moved out. My friend Kyle, who's a summer camp friend, and I spent days and days in 1994 leading up to me starting my own business by looking to buy a computer. You'd go into the store at the time
Yeah.
and you'd have to ask different people different questions. And again, we were both creatives. We both still are, even though different pathways, but we can still laugh about that.
Yeah.
This many 30 years later, we spent so much time and I ended up buying an IBM Aptiva computer that cost me $7,000 Canadian dollars, and a printer, like this huge printer, right? And it was like, here's my life savings. I was like so proud of this investment. And you had to do things differently then. Like you had to be careful. You had to be discerning. You couldn't, I could send you a file
Yeah.
of my logo and you shoot me back a message 2 seconds later, it doesn't work. I send you back another one and I could do it with my eyes closed, not really caring. Oh, if it doesn't work, Rich will ask me for a different format and I can create it.
Yeah.
First of all, people didn't have that capability. Now
Right.
everybody has that capability. But also, you have to put it on a floppy disk or a drive and courier it. So
Yeah.
I had to then negotiate with a courier, and they were like, we can't pick up at a residential address. I lived in an apartment building, and they were like, we don't service residential areas. Imagine that today. We don't come, like, no delivery company is going to come to a personal home. We laugh. And so I had to bust through just being resourceful. I couldn't get a bank loan. Nobody understood a small business. So how am I going to buy $5,000 worth of baseball caps when I don't have that money because I just bought a computer? The bank, I would be like, please see me as a human. It's always been like, and that's what I do now, where it's, I see you as a human. But please, the bank can't see me as a human. I'm a number. My number doesn't work out for them to be like, yeah, you can have $2,000. You seem like a nice person who means it's not
Exactly.
enough.
Exactly.
So I was going to say, I used to send a file on a floppy disk and it would cost me $25. So don't think I didn't double check that floppy disk multiple times. We don't do that anymore. So I had to work faster, but also slower. We had to be really accountable to ourselves because there's no one else to blame.
Yep.
And you had to pray like that envelope doesn't get lost. Like now you freak out if you can't see the tracking number right away online. Then it was like, I hope that gets there.
Yeah.
I had to walk it to a store to send it. And so I found my way by not finding my way. I found my way by hitting roadblock after roadblock. Whereas my answers as being in school, I would say I just shrunk back because I didn't know. Here I had this opportunity to bust through walls. And so I was, but still in other areas, I was still shrinking back. And I still wasn't confident in some places or circles to be like, yeah, I'm working for myself and I'm doing this thing. And people were like, still today in 2025, many of my friends or family have no idea what I do.
Yeah.
I used to try and explain it. Now it's, you can join my community. You can go on my website. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram and probably learn something if you want to. But we're
Yeah.
not here to explain ourselves to other people.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I just answered there, but that's what came out.
Yeah. That was good. And it was good for the audience because of the fact that, and again, I'm relating to this myself because I attempted to go to college. I did 5 semesters, four straight, and then sat out a semester, tried to go back for the fifth, did that, and then eventually was like, oh, can't do this. For me, I'm having to work in between semesters, summers. I'm having to work while I'm there at college. My grades are not great, except for my art classes. I'm doing great in my art classes, but you can't graduate just by your art classes unless you went to a specific,
Which is crazy.
yeah, unless you went to a specific art school that was $10,000 more
Yeah.
get into to begin with. And when I came back from that experience, my job that I was in for 9 years, and at that point, I was starting to have to, I worked at a fast food company called Tubby Subs, which is like Jersey Mike's or Jimmy John's.
It's none of which are approved by me, by the
Okay.
way.
No, that's perfect.
I used to eat that too once upon
Okay.
one time. But
That,
yeah.
yeah, that's perfect. But this is an old company, like some
Yeah.
of them are, but just regionally in Michigan, they've been very popular. Once I came back from college, they moved me into a full-on managerial position running the store. But yet I was starting to see they're not giving me the promotions as quickly as I feel like I'm deserving, along with all these extra duties. So I'm just trying to think, all right, I tried to go to college. I'm not potentially going to get into what I want to do. Ultimately, my goal was to eventually go in to work at the corporate office in the advertising department. Ended up getting denied that 3 times. 3 different times I went in, they denied me. So I'm like, I'm going to go into fashion. I'm going to start designing clothes. And I had no fashion experience whatsoever. Only fashion experience I had was looking at magazines at the bookstore
And wearing clothes every day.
and wearing clothes.
That counts.
Yeah, but I went to school in Florida for college. So there, being around the beaches, I was always going to the surf shops and the skate shops. And I was looking at that street fashion, that surf fashion, that skate culture stuff. And I was like, this is the thing. This is so cool. It's bold, stands out, makes a statement. I want to do this. So dove in and started a company with no knowledge what to do. Only thing I had that I knew I could for sure do was I could draw what I wanted to see made.
But think of what you're saying,
Exactly.
that you actually label that as no knowledge. And that's a factor. That's from the system. That's from modern culture. And the fact that you would use that language is for me to be like, no, Rich, you dressed every day and you had an idea.
Yeah.
So what experience are we supposed to have? Like, you can't go into business because you don't have calculus. Well, guess what? I've been in business for 30 years and I can forensically audit a company and I've helped build CPG brands and take them multinational. And I have a degree in French that, yeah, I have a degree and you don't, but my degree is in French. So really, it's like I bided my time. It was just 3 years spent differently than your 3 years.
Right.
But yeah, and that's what I understand, that if you want to move up in the ranks of a company, that they're like, you're going to require an MBA. Or to be a dentist, I understand that you can't just like open dentistry, but maybe there's so many ways to study
Yeah.
that aren't just conventional. And personally, that's who I want taking care of me in terms of wellness, are people that are actually not someone that's gone through one funnel and has one way of looking at things. I want a wider lens. It's crazy for me to hear you use that language, not as a, as again, not as a criticism to you, but for anyone who's listening, to be like, you
Yeah.
have all the experience you need. If you have the desire to do something,
Yeah.
try and do it. Obviously, the financial wellness factor is a huge consideration,
Yeah.
because we do need to buy apples and we do need a bed to sleep in, but we can be so resourceful. And there's so many people that want to help, and there's so many people that want to collaborate with you. And there's so much, but we don't necessarily see it when we're in the moment, which is why we need to reach out to other people, which is why we need to see what other people are doing who are creative, not to be necessarily in a fish tank with people who are all being promoted in a certain way or following a certain path. We're just not like them. We need to be in a different zoo.
Yeah. No,
That's it.
exactly. And I appreciate that because I know we do use words in a way to not maybe intentionally denigrate ourselves or our abilities, but we use words because of societal structures input on us that tells us if it's not done this way, then it's not the right way.
Versus wrong as opposed to my right
Exactly.
or my right now, which is going to change based on my next little tidbit of information.
Yeah, for sure. With doing this business, experiencing these scenarios of spending the money, the investment to get it going, the bank's not looking at your vision and your ideas to grow and potentially move faster. When did you get maybe the first client where you're like, okay, this is going to set me in a direction of moving beyond year one, year two, year three?
That's still happening.
Okay.
Still happening 31 years later.
Okay.
But I was actually somebody from summer camp
Yeah.
who was program director's wife. She also worked at camp, was a friend, and she was older, not a lot older, but older enough that she had established roots in the film industry. And she saw what I was doing and she fostered. She was like, this is amazing because they needed crew gifts, they needed custom sweatshirts and all this stuff. And in 1994, 1995, what were business hours? 9 to 5. You worked 9 to 5. I was trying to make something. I was willing to do anything. I was like, am I going to have to wait tables to make this work? Whatever.
Yeah.
Crews work all different times. So they were like, can you come down Friday at 11 p.m. for a meeting? And I was like, 100%. I was 22 years old. I was 23 years old. I was like willing to do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I did that for probably until maybe 5 years ago, but I lacked boundaries also because I was like, I didn't want to take that. I didn't want to have to fold clothes at the Gap, even though I was willing to do it. I was like, but she was fiercely loyal. And if you do a good job, if you are a good human and you do a good job and you're honest and you deliver on time, you know what happens? You get more work because it's unique.
Mm.
And sadly, tragically, my business plan of delivering on my promises was all I needed. Tragically, I'm still known for that. It's like, I'm no bullshit.
Yeah.
If you order something and I'm telling you it's going to be $10 and I'm telling you it'll be there by noon, it'll probably be $9. I will probably come in under budget and I will probably come in early.
Yeah.
And that's something that I took so seriously. As I said, my whole business is a trauma response in many ways. And if anyone's listening knows what that is, it's like you provide what you were looking for in a way. And so my first client was this woman in Hunter, that not my first client, but my first client that led to working within an industry with many clients because I got referrals, because I was doing things differently, and because the agency that was working 9 to 5 wasn't available at ridiculous hours.
Mm.
That became my in. Again, being creative with a schedule, breaking out of a system.
Yep.
Sunday's not off limits, like this is my life. And also realizing that I could do certain things at noon as an employee that I couldn't do, and then I could work all day Sunday. What was the difference? So it's not like I didn't work hard, but I could work when I wanted to work.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the beauty of being your own business owner or being a freelance designer is that you,
And a nightmare
yeah,
because
yeah,
we're our own worst bosses.
for
Yeah.
sure. But you have the ability to work whenever you need to get it done. And the key thing that you said in that for me was the fact that you did what you said you were going to do. And I think that can be a component where a lot of creatives get tripped up in the fact that they'll say they can do something and then they'll start to work on it and do it. but they don't believe they need to be true to their word and deliver.
Accountability, it's accountability, right? To
Yeah.
ourselves and to others.
Yeah. And sometimes that is the thing, just that alone, sometimes is the thing that creates the mental frustration for a creative because sometimes they feel, okay, I'm a creative. I need to be able to do this whenever I feel like. But yet, if you're trying to make money at it, you still have to have some of that accountability to deliver and deliver at a reasonable time, if not exactly on time or beforehand. The beforehand and on time, from my perspective, is pure customer service mentality.
A lost art, right?
Absolutely. Going above and beyond to make sure the customer is satisfied. And that's the thing that helps you retain the business.
And let me ask you this back. Going above and beyond, that's the kind of friend I want also.
Right.
That's the kind of husband I want. That's the kind of kids I want to raise.
Yes.
And so I can't have those expectations if I'm not showing up in that way. And I've made a whole lot of mistakes. I am like as messy and flawed as anybody, maybe more. But like my intention is about connection and delivering accountability because I feel that I lack those things. And that's how my business started to connect with the wellness aspect and the creative aspect is because I also realized that who are the first people that don't take care of themselves? Dedicated creatives.
Yeah.
We're like disasters. Like we are so accomplished in one place that we actually forget. It's like you say, it's yeah, you're your own boss. It's like great to have control over your time, except for no one's giving you a vacation. I
Yeah.
had three kids and I never took a day maternity leave. I was like working with my youngest in intensive care. And I'm not saying that as like poor me. I'm saying that's the choice that I made when I was 22 and I had no idea. I was like, oh, like I could have had a year maternity leave in Canada,
Yeah.
paid if
Yeah.
I was working for someone. And here I am like grinding and I'm paying employees and I'm accountable to everybody but myself.
Right.
And it took that realization to realize, oh, it's not just my clients who are sitting across from me at my desk that are struggling, it's also me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then it's the same as anything that I've hit as a, okay, what's the solution here?
For sure.
What's the solution?
For sure. With bringing that up, having the kids, I'm guessing that's also too 9 months prior. You've probably gotten married to that guy from summer camp.
Yep.
How did he see you as a creative and realize within himself that, okay, I can go ahead and commit to this girl at that point in time and know we're going to be all right?
I think when you're young, you don't really know. I think we're much more able to like not over evaluate and overthink everything and think of it as, is this going to work or not work? I don't think either of us really knew. Rob was special from, we knew each other since grade one. So there's like a whole
Uh,
story there. Yeah. We met in grade one. We got together when we were 20. Like my business, I would say that we've grown up together and evolved together. And regardless, we are not on the same page for a lot of things. Like he's an employee and I am like a nightmare employee. We still laugh to this day because I can't even listen to him on his Zoom calls a lot of the time because I'm like, oh my God, it's so inefficient. Like you're not doing it. And it's the judgy person to me. And we laugh about it. And
yeah,
so I just think he's remarkable because he's like a joyful human who brings like it's this crazy ability. Like he loves his job and he likes the people he works with and he contributes in a meaningful way and he coaches the kids, but I cannot relate to what he enjoys in that way, whereas he can't do what I do.
yeah,
So I don't know that we thought about that when we were younger. We just knew that we loved each other and we were both like committed. And along the way, I've championed things that he's wanted to do because I want him to be happy. And he's always done the same thing for me. So I don't know that he would even today be like, oh, I guess she was a creative.
Right.
I was just, we were 20, like
Yeah.
we were 20, and that's young. It's young. Two of my kids are older than that. So I just think we were young, we were committed to each other, and we still are. And I think that's pretty cool to grow and evolve and be champions for each other. It's not lost on me how grateful I am to be in that, in a healthy relationship
Yeah.
all of these years later. And I'm pretty like out there in some ways.
Yeah. That is very cool because there's not many of those relationships out there
Yeah.
that you can look at and say, I knew him in first grade, got together at 20, and we've been together for, was it 32 years, you said?
It'll be 34 years this summer.
34. Okay. That's a long time.
It's a long time.
That's a long time. But what's beautiful about that for me is the fact that there's two souls that came together that have stayed together, essentially, and completely different, but as you've described it.
And
What you,
hard work. Like
yeah,
it's hard work. Like people like, oh, that's so nice. And like it's a fairy tale. It's no,
yeah,
it's hard work. Like we work hard at seeing and functioning and not in a conflictual kind of way, but it takes showing up. Like in some ways, it's so much easier to have a relationship, and in some ways, it's so much more challenging to have a relationship. And you gotta, it's like the duality of everything.
right.
And yeah, so it's not lost on me how privileged and fortunate we both are to stick by each other's sides and want the best for each other.
Sure. And the element that I see within you as a characteristic for being able to do that, even going through difficult times, is the fact that you were committed to seeing it through, just as you are committed to seeing it through for your clients and
Yeah.
making sure that what you said was going to be the case. And I think that that says a whole lot about an individual and even a relationship, whether it's just one-on-one with a client or it's a marriage. Doing the things that you say you're going to do and sticking to that, and if the rough patch hits, you stay committed to the fact that you said you're going to be together.
Yeah.
And so you're going to work through that
Or
rough.
or maybe it's also committed to being honest if you're not
Yeah.
supposed to stay together,
Yeah.
but don't fuck around with trust.
Yeah. Go
So
go there.
it's going to be if I deliver something at 1 p.m. instead of noon, but I've delivered every other time, 100 times early, there's no issue there. That's like
Right.
a human, that's just shit happened. There was an ice storm, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But there's patterns, and you say kind things about that, but it's also I was always so committed to my clients because it was something so firmly in me that I was more committed to my clients than I was to myself. And it also caused me to stay in relationships in business
Yeah.
and in life that were actually not positive ones, but I was like, I'm here for that.
Yeah.
So I didn't necessarily speak my truth. So I own that. And others who just didn't want to be around me, but there's like obligation, there's all these things. And once you're in a relationship that's not healthy, you lack trust. Somebody's breaching trust.
Yeah.
And when there's no trust, it's a sense of self that erodes. And so it's our responsibility to have boundaries. And that's what I say about the difference between discernment and judgment, which is I'm not trying to change you. but like I have to communicate this or I need a boundary. So if I complain about something to you and we're in a relationship, you're not going to hear it as a whine and a complaint. It's I'm expressing my truth and now what are we going to do about that? I don't like when you show up an hour early. Okay, if you don't say that, I'm not going to know that. So you need to be able to have that trusting exchange all the time, not compromise it, and be accountable for your word. You just have to be accountable. That's
Yeah.
comes down to committed to that connection. And if you can't do it, don't take it.
Yeah.
Although I obviously broke that rule too because I used to take work. I'd be like, I can do that. Sure, I can deliver for Thursday. Yellow pages open, phoning. But if I needed to stay up all night, I was doing that. I wasn't calling and being like, I needed to sleep. My cousin asked
Right.
for this. I was
Right.
like, no, I took on a job and I'm going to see that through.
Yeah.
And I've made all the mistakes that I possibly can with my own children because that's what we do as parents.
Yeah.
And I think they're my teachers. But again, not breaching trust,
Right.
saying what I'm going to do, and knowing that we can always talk about whatever needs to be talked about, which is so important.
For sure. The communication is huge. And I think many creatives want to still be that little kid in elementary school that just wants to fade into the background and not be open and communicative. But later on in life, that becomes an essential key into succeeding in relationships and business, even to yourself, getting honest with yourself about certain things. One of the things that you've brought out, just skating over it a little bit, is that you've experienced trauma, and a lot of what you've done has been based off of traumatic experiences and then how you're responding to it. When did you decide, okay, I've experienced these traumas, these have affected me in certain ways, and it affected me in business or the way that I operate now? When did you decide, I'm going to start looking at this more in depth about what these things were and how can I make a difference and change that potentially?
I have ongoing.
Okay.
I ongoing. I
Same.
don't know. I don't know that I even knew the word trauma. I think hindsight is 2020.
Sure.
And for anyone listening, if you're not part of my community online that I started as a way of giving back, it was, oh my goodness, I have all this information now. I'm going to share it and I'm going to share it with like unapologetically.
Yeah.
If it's not what you want to hear, don't show up. I'm going to blow your mind on some things and I'm going to cause you to do an overwhelming amount of work if you want. And if you want to come and just scroll, it's a place where scrolling is good for you. There's no toxic positivity, but I address in to everyone's like, I wiped my first kid's high chair with Lysol wipes. Now, that not only doesn't come into my home, but I speak out against those companies who are breaching our trust in that way. And I'm relatable because I used Lysol wipes. I ate Kraft American cheese for Americans, Kraft
Yeah. Yeah.
slices for Canadians.
Yeah.
I that was all part of my world. And I've gone on my own journey. I call my daughter, who is now 22, and my second child, our family's hero. Because when she was born with a whole bunch of health challenges, I'm sure I did not make them any easier because of my lifestyle choices, whether when I was pregnant or in her first months. But at 3 months, she was in the hospital. And I stopped breastfeeding because the nurse told me that I couldn't anymore. And so in an in a moment of fear, you give your power away to somebody else. And I gave that away, and it was the best thing that I ever did because I realized very quickly, oh my goodness. And I had to solve some issues with her breathing and her allergies. And because my father's a physician and my cousin is, I had connections in the Canadian healthcare system to actually not wait 2 years to get into a leading pediatric dermatologist.
Yeah.
And I still waited, I think 3 months or whatever it is. But I took her in. She was, I think, 22 months. So I had been struggling. She'd been crying every night, not sleeping, itchy. It was hard. And I
Yeah.
had a 2-year-old and an infant, and then a 4-year-old, and she was two. And we went to this dermatologist, and the dermatologist told me you have to use this antibiotic cream on your baby every day, and you have to give her Benadryl, and you should take something too because otherwise you're going to lose your business. Otherwise, you're going to lose your marriage. Otherwise, because you're not sleeping. And I was like, I left with my baby in my arms and I was crying. I wasn't crying because I thought I was going to leave my business. I was like, how is that the place people are waiting 2 fucking years and have all their hope in that you're going to go? And I realized this is not my thing. I went home, and at the time, I think it was simpatico message board, or it was like message boards, whatever it
Yeah.
was, you that dial tone to go in. And I found a group that I wish I knew what it was, because the people in this group were another catalyst where they spoke about cleaning chemicals changing their kids with eczema and psoriasis. And so I was like, okay. So I went through my house where I'm all about efficiency. So I had cleaning products in each room because that's how you keep things clean without going around.
Yeah.
And I had systems in place to be efficient. And I took all the cleaning stuff and I put it into a box and I brought it to my basement where my laundry room is, because I didn't actually want to throw it out, because I was like, this might be a bit crazy, but I'm willing to give it a shot.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, I was cleaning without chemicals. Everything was fine. I was like, I'm never bringing those back into my home. I come downstairs into my laundry room and I realize it stinks in my laundry room. It's if you're a smoker and you show up to a non-smoker's house, you stink, but you don't actually think you do. And all of a sudden I realized these cleaning chemicals stink. So I put them out at my curb for garbage pickup. And I got a notice that I was like in violation because it's hazardous waste. And I had to call the Toronto Toxics taxi. And that was the end. Why are hazardous waste products being sold beside the lettuce at my store?
Yeah.
I'm not an all or nothing thing. I went through my whole house. My husband calls it the slippery slope. It was he would come home from work every day and there'd be like new shit that had been removed from our house. Got rid of the plastics in my kitchen. I went through all of our personal care stuff. I started reading food packages. We're just disconnected from what we are doing. We
Yeah.
don't actually need experts. We need to be our own best expert. And I was thrown into that. I believe at that point I was ready to take that on. And I realized then, connecting, that my entrepreneur that couldn't, was so anxious and stressed, was also dehydrated.
Mm.
And so actually teaching them, like, this helped me, this can help you. And by the way, it's not good to drink cold water, but it's this. And I found my way. And I was one person, this was 2003, 2004. There weren't people working in wellness. There weren't people dancing around on Instagram making green smoothies promising you a healthier life. So no gimmicks, no bullshit. And I had to give up. I chose to give up around, I don't know, I make up the numbers all the time because numbers aren't my thing, but around 90% of my revenue stream that I had worked so hard for a decade to build, and I had been doing really well,
Yeah.
because I realized I don't want to work for these big banks and pharma companies and big food, because that's not, and that's what led me to develop empathy economics, one of my favorite terms,
Okay.
which is if you trace back anything that you're buying or consuming back to where it came from, you're always going to make a good answer, a good decision for yourself.
Right.
Always. And that led me to solve, honest to goodness, my daughter's, it took 2 weeks for her to get better.
Oh, wow.
And so, had you not take that as a creative, as a problem solver, as a business consultant, and keep what you do for a living separate.
Yeah.
So I go back to my sweatshirt that I addressed.
Yeah.
I'll still do sweatshirts. I did this one,
Yeah.
but this is organic cotton. It's made in a factory, fair trade.
Yeah.
It's printed not with any flame retardants or any polymers
Yeah.
that are dangerous to human skin.
Yeah.
People are like, I'm not willing to pay more for that. Okay, to me, that's the only option. I'm not looking for cheap or convenient. I'm looking to work with value. And that's in a relationship.
Yeah.
I need to receive, as in keep exchanging, because that's how we stay creative. Flow over being stagnant. I want to keep learning. I want to keep doing better. I love that I feel now that I don't have any answers. However, I have more answers than you in some things, and you have more answers than me in other things. So if I can stay in conversation with people who are open,
Yeah.
trustworthy,
Yes.
then I get to grow and you get to grow. So that's my business now, too.
Yeah. And that's where I was going next, was the community that you've created. The mission behind that and wanting that to be something that grows into a foundation for information. How did you come to the decision, I'm going to start the community?
So, like with everything, I have some long-winded answer, but
All right.
I had been, based on all these discoveries and where I was, I started something called the Borden Big List.
Okay.
And I also wrote a children's book right there called The Tale of Kale.
Okay.
And they were all solutions. They were all things that I wanted to put out, not just as a creative, but to tell a certain story, to be in service to others, to not hug what I was learning that I thought was like, why don't we know this? That chemicals are hazardous waste. So I had all these different crazy branches to my business. And I hadn't altered my business. I just kept adding different things. Then I couldn't find candles that I wanted. And so I created a candle brand in 30 minutes because it's like if you're creative and you have resources, you can do that all day.
Yeah.
None of which were making me money. I was doing them all basically as like joy projects. I was like, how can I bring this all together? And so the pandemic, which I believe was a huge gift because it removed all of the expectations that I had to be anywhere. That's where I wrote three of my books and I started my community. And I was like, I am going to bring all these things together in one place.
Yeah.
And in a time where people were having to and forced to pivot for the most insane reasons we've ever seen in our lifetime, I was like, I can bring this something virtual that's very special because and this doesn't necessarily sound right, but I've collected exceptional humans that don't know each other. So at least I
Right.
can do this matchmaking. And I had been doing it for years, but I was spending how long it takes to write a thoughtful intro. And then, like we discussed before, then what happens when one person doesn't reply?
Yeah.
It looks bad on me. It's annoying. I have to keep chasing people. And I'm doing that as an in-service thing. I'm
Yeah.
a mom of three. I'm a wife. I want to be a friend. I'd like to go for a walk, things like that. And so I decided if I put everyone into this one pool, it's your fucking problem to show up, not mine. I'm
Right.
here to give recklessly with no boundaries
Yeah.
if you show up.
Right.
If you ask me for something now, I send you a link. It's in Twic. It's not a trick. It's not manipulation. It's there. But if you can't log in, not my problem. Like you have to do the work. I'm doing the work. You also have to do the work. And my community doesn't cost anything financially. I do it all on a contribution model. So I say if somebody comes in and finds everything they were looking for that they would have paid a consultant $50 for or $50,000 for, throw a few dollars back in, not for me to buy organic apples, but for me to help the next rich. And so I started the community as a side project to bring all of my shit together and have a place where there was no ads or algorithms, where scrolling was good for you and there was no bullshit. That's basically my thing. It
Yeah.
took over my life. It took over my business. It's my purpose. It's what I'm supposed to be doing. I still do my one-to-one consulting, but it's now not just business wise, it's business and human wise, meaning sometimes I'm taking care of the entrepreneur as a client, not because you have to take care of yourself to take care of others. You have to take care of yourself to run a good business. And like you mentioned about creatives, sometimes we want to shrink back in that corner and we feel really good being creative.
Yeah.
That's a hobby.
Right.
I am great. Do your outlet the same way that we need to have outlets.
Yeah.
But if you want to be a creative and in business where you are in relationship with someone, you better be accountable and understand that your creativity is not for yourself. Your creativity is something where it's for yourself and to make sure that there's some functionality and it's serving its purpose for what you've sold.
Yeah.
Is my preachiness in that. And
No.
that's the thing is I think everything works. I use the line all the time, better together, and it sounds so cheesy,
Yeah.
but it really doesn't. This interview doesn't work if you're the only one who shows up on Zoom.
Correct.
It's the same, it's no different
Yeah.
for anything.
Yeah. Exactly. One of the books that is clearly behind you there in bright yellow coloring, and I don't know if you've noticed it's here behind me as well.
It's,
Explain to the audience of the idea behind say yes.
oh, all of my answers are all over the place,
That's
but
okay.
basically, I think the world focuses for a long time, we've heard people saying that we have to learn how to say no, that we need these boundaries, and on a mental health note,
Yeah.
and many people who are trained mental health practitioners would be like, she's not able to say that. I've done my own certifications and I have my own feelings and my own practices. I think part of saying no is very charged with something that's negative and that we have to shut down.
Yeah.
And I don't find that particularly productive.
Okay.
I think we need to bring joy into our life. I think we need to see options. And so, one of the things is if I say yes to taking a walk, because that's good for me, I'm automatically going to say no to you booking that meeting. So the no's can come from saying yes. And I like to, in everything that I do, I want to shift how people approach their work and their life. I don't want to tell them what they should do. One of the pages in the book is no shoulding.
Yeah.
There's no shoulding. So I'm not going to tell you you should not use with cleaners. I'm going to tell you why cleaners are an issue, what they are doing, and then it's up to you to decide.
Right.
You're not a better client or a worse client because of your choices. But what are you saying yes to? I'm saying yes to clean air. I'm saying yes to something, or then what am I saying no to? So I really want to bring the joy forward. And what are the things that we can do instead of, because the list of what we shouldn't be doing is really long and can take us down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it's also, as inside, say yes to all little teeny things. And I always say it's like toilet reading. It's not like a story or something big. It doesn't matter what page you open. It's like the little things are the big things, or the little things can be the big things. And if it sounds cheesy to you, I would say, great. I still challenge you to try it.
Yeah. No,
And
exactly.
in my community, it's all snack size pieces
Yeah.
because you could read a whole book on eggs being good or bad. I'm not into labeling things. Like, here's the information about eggs. I don't know your constitution,
Right.
I don't know your age, I don't know your health issues. And even if you go to a naturopath and a doctor, they're still not going to give you that multidimensional
Right.
answer. So that's what I'm trying to do with the book as well as the community.
Yeah, and that's the thing that it, I wanted to get out there too from that is that if you're able to shift the way that you look at how words are used, changes can take place. If you are open to the conversations,
100%.
changes can take place. It doesn't have to be all one way versus the other. It can be one way and the other.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for many creatives, because we think we need to go down this specific path and excel at this specific thing, you negate some of the other options that can be out there
Yep.
that could actually potentially be the real path that you're supposed to be on versus the one that you think you're going in the direction of.
100%.
And that's the message that I'm trying to bring to the forefront as well.
But that's why we're connected, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
there's somebody else who gets it, and that feels so validating and great. And that's why I've started the community that I have, because it's about if you're a curious, open-minded human, show up.
yeah.
And so is it for entrepreneurs or is it this? I'm like, it's about equality,
Yeah.
not equality, equality, which
Right.
is you can stand for anything as long as you realize sometimes you might be offended, sometimes you're not going to be, but there's that space to pause and hear the other person or speak back. There's always that opportunity to respond. It's not one way.
Yeah.
And so being in community with you has a benefit to me, has a benefit to you, and then whatever we're sharing in the open hopefully has a benefit to other people who are watching.
Yeah.
It's that's why a community is so brilliant, where it's not just me as a host speaking out. I tell people all the time, you have to leave your comments because that's the way that we connect with each other. And we
Yeah.
never know who we're going to find in the journey that sparks our creativity or keeps it alive or validates it or shows us that path.
And I think that too is where I look at things from branding standpoints and how the messaging comes across. And the fact that you've named the community the Wellness Intelligence Collective, meaning the intelligence of everyone, not excluding anyone, but it's for everyone. And the more that you come together in a community, the intelligence can rise because of all of the other different aspects that everybody brings. And
Absolutely. And the same through the dimensions of wellness, because the logo, right, is about all kinds of wellness coming together,
yeah,
mental, emotional, physical, right? So it's so many people do yoga and they're committed to their or run marathons
yeah,
and they're so adept in their physical wellness. They also have financial wellness, but what about caring about, their mental emotional work
yeah,
or their spiritual work and focusing on any one thing or any one person or when any one aspect doesn't help us grow.
for
So
sure.
it's about bridging all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I find that interesting too, because I was in Boy Scouts for a short period of time, completely
Mhm.
hated it. But one of the things that I
Yeah.
did see from that was that there was this aspect of a bunch of people coming together and doing common things to make it work. And going back to you being that camp counselor and having all of those kids come into place for however long, was it for the summer or whenever it occurred throughout the year, you were facilitating then in a way as you're facilitating now, being that camp host, that camp counselor still yet. And I see that across the trajectory of line of your life.
Thank you for that. I love that.
Yeah. With what you're doing and the all-around wellness of a person and an individual, because in the States, there's so many people that are experiencing dis-ease and disease because of some of the things that you've explained that you've done away with in your life. With this Wellness Intelligence Collective, what would you like to have the listeners who are in the creative community, what would you want them to understand a little bit more about how it can benefit to be a part of that?
Let's start with saying if you believe that anything's possible, you might find your way there.
There you go.
Just very simply, that if you're looking for signs, reminders, and you want to be better, and that can mean for yourself, for your relationships, for your business, for your creativity, that's what I'm there. That's what's being created. That's really it. But that's the shortest answer I can give.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it is, I teach something called exercise snacks and self-care snacks. And it's if you're not willing to take care of yourself, I don't really have any other answers for you. I didn't used to take care of myself in the way that I know now, but I always thought I was taking care of myself.
sure.
So I always say to people, like, go in and dive in. They're snacks. Because what I've done is, even though everything's connected, I've isolated small things to try and, in a couple minutes, open portals of curiosity for people.
Yeah,
I don't bring up any problems and challenges without offering pathways for the solutions. So, you want to be a better parent, you want to be a better skater. There's so many answers for you in there,
yeah,
as well as the people. So, you might find you're looking for investment for something, the investor is in there. You're looking for a gallery owner, the investor, the person's in there. You're
yeah,
looking for someone to be on a podcast because you want to get your word out,
yeah.
that person's in there. You
Right,
want to look and go on esoteric spiritual travel trips, that person's in there. And there's lots of not necessarily identify as creative people who are also there,
sure.
which makes it all sort of work,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
no matter what kind of healer you're looking for, I have over 150 different people who have taught an exercise snack. So I say, if you only know yoga, come and learn one snack of Qigong. Your answer might be that is definitely not for me, and I do not like that person. That's
Right.
great. That's one step closer to something that you do.
Yeah,
So that's, I always say you have to give it a shot. You have to give it a chance.
that's fantastic. And I think that would be a good spot for us to close out today. And at the end, I always want to remind the audience to listen to your heart and be kind to your mind.
I love it. I second that.